Hi everyone, and I wanted to make an additional video for the first week of the Science and Spirituality class. And you have a video that you'll find in Moodle. It's located in a couple of places, in the mentor's comments and in the document that tells you about the readings and discussion posts and assignments for each week. So there's a video in each of those. Actually, that video I made last year, and it's completely relevant because the subject of science and spirituality at heart has stayed the same. But I want to constantly make you videos that are new as well, updates. And well, so definitely watch that video, and the content in it is extremely relevant to how you're going to proceed. But then there'll be these additional videos that I'll probably just email you links to them. And I'm excited to go through this course with you. And hopefully, and as in that I say in that other video, it's a course that might not actually be the kind of course on science and spirituality that you might have anticipated or thought it would be. But I think it's necessary to have a course like this to understand even the question of science, of any question about science and spirituality, really. So I think it's totally relevant, and it also is relevant to someone who lives in Western culture of any kind, because our culture is infused with a worldview that has interacted very closely with science, and our cultural worldview and the scientific worldview have influenced one another. So very closely, there's been this tight sort of feedback loop that has existed between the development of science and our cultural worldview, and they're not independent from one another. And so it's very much a case of understanding what it means to be a sort of a human within any kind of Western culture in the current age. And so it's not just really about science and spirituality. It's about really the whole course is about what we think reality is and who we think we are. And of course, both science and religion have had takes on those questions, but we have them both. We have them both, and so it's really a question of the integration of the two, or the resolution of an apparent conflict between the two, is really a coming to a place of having your view on what you think reality is and who you think you are, basically. And so I regard it as being a very important subject in that way. You may hear this noise. I'm sat by this sort of babbling brook here in Colorado. I'll take a little bit of a video of it and attach it to this video so you get a sense of where I am. I do often like to try and include nature in my videos and to even make them in a natural setting. For me, as someone who's been a scientist but who's also been spiritual and studied religion, for me it is in nature that it all comes together. It is through nature that it all comes together. So that's why one of the reasons why I like to, I mean, obviously I just like being in natural settings because it's fantastic, but there's something about being in nature that automatically brings these two things together, science and spirituality. It can bring them together. So nature herself can be the sort of integrating factor, I see. So that's why I include this. In this video, I just want to emphasize about discussion posts. And I designed this course, and first of all, I really value dialogue and discussion. I think that's where we learn, in dialogue and discussion. We really learn there a lot. And so being exposed to the thinking of others and the ideas of others and exchanging is extremely important. And so I'd like to emphasize that. I wanted to emphasize that in this class. And so it's not a class that's sort of full of essays that you have to do. In a way, sort of, you might think of each discussion post as being a small essay. And I want us to really focus our time and effort. You've got a lot of reading. Well, there's reading to do, and it's so there's all of that. But I want you to focus your time and effort on writing these discussion posts, and really engage with the discussion posts and with each other. And I'll be engaging with you too. And I think that's important. I wanted to say a few words about the textbook. Okay, so the main textbook, which is Richard Tarnas' book on the history of Western thought, it's a book that really, ultimately, as a whole, tries to lay out how we got where we are today. How did we get here? From where did we get? From where? And what was the route we took to get here today? And in doing so, it sort of shows you. To read the whole book, which is actually a challenging thing, and we won't be doing that. But it's this look at how our worldview, how we evolved, starting over 2,000 years ago to here, really tells you a lot about who we are, and it also puts how we think in this context of this great sort of history of thinking, and so one starts to see that we're in our modern world, we're still embedded in this history of thinking and ideas, and not separate from it. So it's not like we have this. We might pretend we do, but it's not like we have this objective view that's independent of our past. It's not. We're greatly influenced by our past. And so it's very, very important, I feel, to understand our heritage, our thinking heritage, and how that affects us today, and how we, even to the degree of how we see the world, is affected by it. How we see, literally, how we see perception is affected by our history, because the modes of thinking, the modes of seeing the world are sort of programmed into us, basically, through our ancestry. And we need to see that. And you might think that you do know that, and I would suggest that you keep an open mind and keep going. But about the book, it's not an easy book to read, so I want to just prepare you. It's just not an easy book to read. I think he's a good writer, but it's like really taking in what he's saying is quite difficult, I find. And so I'm just suggesting that, if you have time, read a reading twice. I would really recommend doing that. But the other thing to do, I think, is to have a notebook open, and as you're reading, write down things that strike you as being significant. Don't think you're going to remember them. As you go, just write. Even if you think, oh, I remember that. No, just write it down, so that you have basically in your notebook a list of significant points that you think came out of that reading, or that were being made in that reading, and things that strike you. That's significant. Or I don't agree with that, or I agree with that. Whatever. So keep notes as you read, and then you'll have these notes to look at, to give you a kind of sense of a kind of summary, a sort of synopsis of the main things that came out of what you read. Because otherwise what happens is, I find with reading Tarnas, I read a whole thing and I think, a whole chapter say, and I think, oh, that was great, and it's like, but I can't really remember what it was I read. I can't really remember what it seemed really significant, but I can't actually I couldn't actually tell you what was the most significant points, because in a way there's just so much, but it's also his way of expressing himself. I think is a little bit difficult, can be a little bit challenging. Nevertheless, it's really the only book of this kind that I know of, and it's an award-winning book, and it's really a fantastic book. But like I say, it has difficulties in terms of reading, and not everyone appreciates it. But just try and take an open mind with it. It's really a special book, and very important, I think, for us. And it will lead us. We won't be reading it the whole way through, but we'll come back to it at the end. His conclusions kind of lead us to a kind of conclusion with respect to where things might be going now, or what might go now. So those two things, really focus, really engage in the discussion questions, and that's really how the discussion question. Your discussion posts are actually graded, and the only requirement that I really have is that I get it, that you really engaged with this question and you put yourself into it, and then there are no right or wrong answers. It's just the engagement with the question. Engage with it, really, and think about it and write about it and with each other, and then everybody gets full marks if that is clearly the case, and I'm sure that will be. So anyway, I'm so happy to be on this journey with you, and hope we have some fun with it. Also, you've got the question time thing, which I said I do want you to express yourself to me. If you're like this is like a class, like all classes really. It's like where you are encouraged to bring you to the table. So say you come across something in the course, and it's like you're not happy about it, you're upset about it, or the opposite, something that makes you really really triggers you in some way, or you find really positive. Say it in the discussions post, or say it using question time. Ask me questions. Is this really what we think's happening? Because this really pisses me off. It's all about bringing you to the table. So in the discussion posts, that's another thing, is bring yourself to the table. Don't come from just an abstract theoretical point of view about this thing. What's your experience? What is your intuition telling you? But say that. Say where something that you're writing is coming from, and then try and relate that to the mental and the abstract. So bring your heart into this. Science and spirituality. Science is objective, but spirituality is coming from somewhere else, and we're trying to bring the two together. Let's do that. Let's bring the two together in how we write and what we say, but be clear about where things are coming from in you. Is it, something you read? It's got a reference, a citation, or is it coming from your own experience and your own spiritual experience, or your own intuition? And does that align with what you've read or not align? And these kinds of things. This is very key, and I'm going to probably be a broken record saying this to you over and over again. Anyway, I'm looking forward to all of our discussions and talks. We do have a couple of Zoom dialogues, discussion. So we'll get to see each other, and that will help us know each other better. And anyway, I'm looking forward to it. So here we go. So this is the little stream that I was sat by to make that video. And I wanted you all to get a sense of the setting. Where I live in Sedona, we don't generally have this kind of thing, so happy to be here.